My name is Maeve Carter, and I'll never forget the day Karen Mitchell looked me in the eye and said, "Honey, this is a tech firm, not a reality show. We don't negotiate with junior staff." Her voice dripped with that fake sweetness you'd expect from a teacher scolding a kid for coloring outside the lines. I was standing in her Seattle office, clutching a 14-page report I'd spent weeks compiling, every vendor I'd onboard, every crashed system I'd patched, every billing disaster I'd cleaned up while the rest of the team was busy arguing over coffee pod flavors. My hands shook, not from nerves, but from the kind of quiet rage that burns slow and deep, the kind that grows when you've been invisible too long. I grew up in Tacoma, just south of Seattle, in a small house where my mom, a nurse, and my dad, a mechanic, taught me that hard work was the only way to get ahead. Scholarships got me through college, where I studied computer science, dreaming of building systems that mattered. But at 29, I was stuck as a junior analyst at a mid-sized tech firm in Seattle's tech district, drowning in outdated code and a team that treated me like a glorified intern. I wasn't asking for a corner office or a company car, just a pay bump to match the blood I'd poured into fixing their messes. My report listed it all: $18,000 a month saved by catching a billing glitch, 3 vendor portals I'd rebuilt from scratch, and a compliance nightmare I'd untangled while my manager, Tom Reynolds, was busy curating Spotify playlists for team morale. Karen's office smelled like lavender air freshener and corporate denial. She tilted her head, her blonde bob catching the fluorescent light, and gave me that smile, the one that says, "I'm humoring you, but you're wasting my time." I wanted to scream, to flip her desk, to demand she read every line of my work. Instead, I nodded, slow and deliberate, like I was memorizing her face for a reckoning I hadn't planned yet. "I understand," I said, my voice steady despite the fire in my chest. I just thought my contributions deserved a conversation. She chuckled, like I'd told a cute joke, and said, "We value you, Maeve, but we have to be fair to the team." The team. The same team that crashed a vendor portal because someone, probably Tom, clicked ignore on a security update. I walked out, my report still in hand, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut but already plotting my next move. That night, I sat in my tiny Capitol Hill apartment, staring at the Puget Sound through a rain-streaked window. My parents' voices echoed in my head, "Keep your head down, Maeve. Work hard, and they'll see you." But they hadn't seen me, not Karen, not Tom, not anyone. I opened my laptop, the glow lighting up my face, and logged into LinkedIn for the first time in months. I wasn't looking for validation anymore. I was looking for a way out, and a way to make them regret ever calling me honey. The week before I faced Karen in HR, I was eating cold ramen in the break room, the air thick with the smell of burnt microwave popcorn and broken dreams. My desk at the Seattle tech firm was a war zone of sticky notes and error logs, each one a reminder of the chaos I was holding together. Our vendor systems were a mess. Think duct tape on a sinking ship. The software hadn't been updated since I was in college, and half the integrations were so tangled it was like someone had let a toddler loose in a server room. I'd spent that week staying late, rerouting API pathways by hand, chasing a billing error that was bleeding $18,000 a month, and babysitting a vendor portal that crashed every time someone sneezed near it. Meanwhile, my manager, Tom Reynolds, was too busy showing off a new team-building app to notice the company was one bad sync away from a lawsuit. Tom was the kind of boss who thought leadership meant forwarding emails he was already CC'd on. He'd saunter in, reeking of too much cologne, and say things like, "Maeve, can you make this dashboard pop for the execs?" He never asked how the data got there, just wanted the charts to look less scary. I'd grit my teeth, thinking of my parents back in Tacoma, who'd worked double shifts to give me a shot at this life. Mom would say, "Maeve, you're smarter than all of them. Just keep going." But keeping going felt like running on a treadmill that was on fire. I was proud of my fixes, the way I'd untangled a compliance mess or saved a vendor contract from imploding, but pride doesn't pay rent, and it doesn't stop the sting of being invisible. The worst part? I wasn't alone in the grind, but I was alone in caring. My coworkers were nice enough, but they'd panic when I took a sick day, like I was the only one who knew the Wi-Fi password. Steve from IT, who thought reboot was a personality trait, once fixed a server by unplugging it. I'd come back to find 3 vendor portals locked out, and I'd have to clean it up while Tom sent Slack memes about team synergy. I'd lie awake at night, my laptop humming, wondering if this was it, if all my late nights and debugged code would just vanish into the void of a company that didn't care. But deep down, I felt a spark, a stubborn refusal to let them define my worth. That spark kept me going, even when I was too tired to cry. It was the same spark that made me open LinkedIn after Karen's rejection, ready to turn my exhaustion into something sharper, something they'd never see coming. Karen's honey echoed in my head like a bad song, but I didn't let it break me. Instead, I channeled it into something dangerous. Focus. Back in my Capitol Hill apartment, with rain tapping the windows, I opened my laptop and turned LinkedIn into my war room. I wasn't scrolling for likes or validation, I was hunting. Every vendor and client we'd ever worked with, every company I'd bailed out of a system crash, was now a target. I'd spent years fixing their messes, portals I'd rebuilt, outages I'd resolved, invoices I'd tracked down. If my own company wouldn't see me, someone else would. My fingers flew across the keyboard, my search history a list of names I'd once saved from disaster. I wasn't just looking for a job, I was building a plan. 2 days later, I got a message that stopped my heart. Maeve, your name came up in an audit. You fixed our contract portal last quarter, right? It was Marcus Lee, a senior systems director at Cascade Health Logistics, a Portland-based client we'd worked with for years. I'd spent countless nights babysitting their systems through outages caused by our shoddy integrations. Marcus wanted to meet, just to talk. My pulse raced, not from excitement, but from possibility. I'd grown up watching my parents grind through jobs that never rewarded them, always one paycheck from a crisis. This was my chance to break that cycle, to prove I wasn't just a cog in someone's machine. I took a PTO day, told Tom I was getting a cavity filled, and drove to Portland. Cascade's office was a stark contrast to our Seattle chaos. Glass walls, real coffee, a whiteboard still marked with notes from a recent crisis I'd helped resolve. Marcus didn't waste time. Your company's systems are a mess, he said, leaning back in his chair. We see your name on every fix. We don't need a consultant, we need you. They offered a full-time role, better pay, better title, more control. The kicker? They wanted me to lead a vendor audit of my own company. I drove back to Seattle in a daze, the Oregon rain blurring my windshield. My heart was a mix of hope and fear, a hope that I could finally be seen, fear that I was betraying the team I'd carried for years. But as I parked outside my apartment, the fear faded. Karen's voice, Tom's apathy, the endless nights fixing their mistakes, it all clicked. This wasn't just an escape. It was a chance to hold them accountable. I smiled, not like I'd won, but like I'd just found the key to a door they didn't know existed. I said yes to Cascade Health Logistics, but I didn't quit my job, not yet. By day, I was still Maeve Carter, the junior analyst in Seattle, buried in error logs and Tom's pointless dashboard requests. By night, I was something else, a shadow operative for Cascade, dissecting my own company's systems like a surgeon with a grudge. It was thrilling, like living in a spy novel, but it came with a weight. I'd think about my coworkers, some of whom I'd laughed with over bad coffee, and feel a pang of guilt. But then I'd remember Karen's smirk, Tom's playlists, and the way they'd let me drown in their chaos. The guilt didn't last long. Cascade gave me access to their vendor logs, and I dove in, pulling data I'd stashed on my personal drive, old tickets, error reports, things I'd fixed but never got credit for. I spent weekends in my apartment, sticky notes covering my desk like a crime board, mapping out every flaw in our systems, unencrypted billing files, expired security protocols, a login system so broken it was practically begging to be hacked. I'd grown up hearing my dad talk about fixing engines, find the leak, trace the fault, rebuild it right. This was my engine, and I was tearing it apart to show Cascade exactly where my company had failed them. Marcus looped me into private Slack channels, where Cascade's team treated me like I mattered. They called me the bridge, the one who could explain why their portal crashed or their invoices were late. I'd finish a day at the Seattle office, dodging Tom's requests to jazz up a report, then come home and boot up my laptop, my heart racing as I drafted audit slides for Cascade. High-priority risks, compliance gaps, recommendations, all backed by data I'd lived and breathed for years. It wasn't just work, it was vengeance served cold and calculated. I'd lie awake, my Tacoma roots grounding me, remembering my mom's advice. Don't let them make you small, Maeve. I wasn't small anymore. I was the one holding the map, and I was leading Cascade straight to the truth. The audit was coming, and I was ready to walk back into my old office, not as a junior analyst, but as the person they'd have to answer to. Quitting wasn't dramatic, it was surgical. I typed my resignation letter in 10 minutes, sitting in my apartment with a cup of chamomile tea gone cold. Dear Karen, it began, polite but sharp, like a blade wrapped in silk. I didn't mention the audit or Cascade, just that I was leaving, effective in 2 weeks. Submitting it through the HR portal felt like canceling a gym membership I'd never used. No one called me in for an exit interview. Karen sent an auto-generated email with a PDF titled Transition Guide for Junior Staff, which, in a twist of irony, wouldn't even open. I laughed alone in my living room, renaming the file Karma before closing my laptop. Walking into the Seattle office after that felt like playing a role. Tom barely noticed, too busy tweaking a team-building app's font size. You're leaving, he said when I told him, like I'd just mentioned I was switching lunch orders. Hope it's a good move, Maeve. I smiled, the kind you give when you know something they don't. My nights were spent finalizing Cascade's audit prep, spreadsheets of unencrypted files, logs of ignored tickets, a compliance certificate that hadn't been renewed in years. I thought of my parents, how they'd taught me to fix what's broken, not walk away. But this wasn't about fixing anymore. It was about showing what happens when you ignore the person holding the wrench. Leaving wasn't just relief, it was a quiet storm in my chest. I'd carried this team, stayed late, skipped dinners with friends, all for a company that called me honey and forgot my name in meetings. But as I packed my desk, a cracked mug, a notebook with my mom's handwriting in the margins, I felt something new, power. I opened my planner and circled a date 2 weeks out, audit day. The words stared back at me, underlined in red. I wasn't just walking away. I was coming back, and they'd see me this time, not as Maeve Carter, junior analyst, but as the one who'd make them choke on their own mistakes. The elevator dinged, and I stepped into the Seattle office I'd left 2 weeks ago, but this time, I wasn't carrying a lunch tote or a chipped badge. I wore a tailored navy blazer, a guest badge from Cascade Health Logistics clipped to my lapel, and a laptop bag full of evidence. The lobby smelled the same, printer toner and stale ambition, but I wasn't the same. My reflection in the elevator's mirror showed a woman who wasn't tired or overlooked. I was Maeve Carter, lead systems auditor, and I was here to turn their world upside down. The shock hit like a wave when I walked into the conference room. Kyle from Data dropped his pen, his glasses slipping as he blinked at me like I was a ghost. 2 engineers whispered, one mouthing, "Is that Maeve?" Karen Mitchell stood by the glass wall, clutching her water bottle like it could save her. Her eyes locked on my badge and her smile froze, sour as a lemon. "Welcome back," she said, her voice tight. "Thanks," I replied, opening my laptop just enough for her to see the slide header, Lead Systems Auditor, Cascade Health Logistics. Her throat clicked as she swallowed. Greg Harper, the VP of Ops who'd once told me to mature professionally, stood up and knocked over his coffee, soaking a stack of outdated reports I knew he hadn't read. "Didn't know you'd be joining us," he stammered, wiping his tie. I took the head of the table, not the side, not the corner, and said, "I'm not joining. I'm leading. Full systems audit, retroactive 12 months, per your contract with Cascade." The room went quiet, like a graveyard at midnight. I clicked through my slides, each one a knife, unencrypted login files, expired compliance certificates, vendor accounts with admin access for people who'd left years ago. My heart pounded, not with fear but with the thrill of justice. I'd spent years fixing their messes, and now I was exposing them. Karen's pen rolled off the table. Greg's face was red, like he was chewing glass. I kept my voice calm, my Tacoma roots grounding me. "I warned you, I thought, but you didn't listen." And now they had no choice but to hear me. 3 days into the audit, the Seattle office was unraveling like a cheap sweater. My findings folder was a digital crime scene, shared login spreadsheets in unsecured folders, compliance certificates older than my college degree, and error logs I'd flagged years ago, ignored by Tom and his playlist obsession. Cascade had given me full access, and I didn't hold back. Every report I sent had timestamps, metadata, and Slack threads where executives pretended nothing was wrong while systems bled data. By Thursday, Greg was sweating through his tie, and Karen had vanished from the audit floor, probably hiding in HR with a stress candle. Cascade suspended payments to my old company, triggering panic. Slack channels buzzed with executives pinging junior devs for answers they didn't have. Then came the email from a director I barely knew, the one who'd once told me to stay in my lane. Subject: quick chat. They wanted a short-term consulting engagement to stabilize critical areas. I laughed, the sound sharp in my quiet apartment. My reply was sharper. My rate is 5 times my old salary, weekly, upfront, non-negotiable. They responded in an hour. We'll get back to you. I knew they would. Then my inbox lit up with messages from coworkers, junior devs, support staff, people who'd never looked up from their screens when I was there. Things feel unstable, one wrote. You hiring? Another asked. I remembered sitting across from them, fixing their crashes while they scrolled social media. Now they saw me, not because I'd changed, but because the ground was shaking, and I was the one holding the map. Cascade's CIO invited me to lunch, floating the idea of a new compliance task force led by me. I started a list of candidates, names from my inbox, people I'd trained to think before things went nuclear. My heart swelled not just with pride, but with the weight of power I'd earned. I wasn't just auditing anymore. I was building something new, and my old company was learning what happens when you ignore the person keeping the lights on. It ended on a Tuesday, quiet as a guillotine. Cascade sent a single email, CC'd to every executive who'd ever forgotten my name, termination of vendor agreement, non-compliance and security failures. 2 sentences, cold and final. All systems access revoked, all invoices voided. The silence was louder than any explosion. By noon, Tom posted a LinkedIn update about New Horizons and Greg added resilience to his bio. Karen stayed quiet, but she wouldn't for long. I walked into conference room 3B at Cascade's Portland office, my new badge reading director of systems integrity. The same room where Karen had once handed me a useless career pamphlet now had my name on the reservation. My team, people I'd hired, former colleagues who'd seen the light, sat around the table with clean metrics and a roadmap that didn't scream disaster. They looked to me, not out of fear, but because they knew I'd walked through fire to get here. At 2 p.m., the door opened. Karen stepped in, escorted by a Cascade liaison, her HR badge useless now. I gestured to the seat I used to take, the one where I'd sat with my hands folded and my hopes buried. She sat, eyes darting like a trapped animal. I slid a document across the table, slow and deliberate. At the top, in bold, termination recommendations, compliance failures. Her name was there, halfway down, between 2 others I'd audited into oblivion. Her fingers trembled as she reached for it. I met her gaze, my voice steady as steel. We do negotiate now, I said, pausing just long enough for it to sink in. But not with people like you. My Tacoma roots, my parents' late-night lessons about standing tall, pulsed through me. I wasn't just closing a chapter, I was writing a new one on my terms. To everyone who's followed this journey, thank you. You've walked with me through late nights, betrayals, and the kind of comeback that feels like breathing again. If my story hit you where it hurts, hit that subscribe button and join us. Every click is a step toward building your own map out of the chaos. Keep fighting for your worth, and I'll meet you at the top.